Hello, everybody. Welcome to our friends and family and folks who love music and art and love Leanne and Sandra, Leanne Simpson and Sandra Brewster. Welcome to AGO from Home. Nice to see you. We have a lovely evening of music and video, and it is the launch of Leanne Simpson's new album, Theory of Ice. And it is also the launch of the video for Viscosity, one of the tracks. And the videographer is Sandra Brewster. And we're here to listen to some tunes, talk to each other, get to know each other a little better, and think a lot about water. I'm Wanda Nanabush. I'll be your host this evening. I'm the curator of Indigenous art at the Art Gallery of Ontario. I was like, where do I work? The Art Gallery of Ontario, the AGO. And I'm Anishinaabe from Beausoleil First Nation. This is the water. I brought my own water to this event that I come from. It's in Georgian Bay. And those are my nephews running and my brother in the background. And this is a work by Rebecca Belmore called Wave Sound. It is meant to sit and put your ear to it and listen to the water. So I thought it was appropriate for this beautiful new groundbreaking album from Leanne Simpson that we will be listening to tonight. Leanne, as you might know, is one of the most compelling and important Indigenous voices of her generation. She is the renowned author of Nopaming, The Cure for White Ladies, and it won, named the best book of the year by the Globe and Mail. The Accident of Being Lost was the winner of MacEwan University Book of the Year, finalist for the Rogers Writers Trust Fiction Prize and the Trillium Book Award. It was named also the best book of the year by a number of places. It was a winner. As We Have Always Done, Indigenous Freedom Through Radical Resistance, another book that was awarded Best Subsequent Book by the Native American Indigenous Studies Association. She is also the creator of the album Flight, which combined complex poetry and multi-layered stories of land, spirit, and body with lush electronic and acoustic arrangements. We are here to celebrate the launch of the new album, Theory of Ice. And again, it's where poetry becomes song and music, and it brings forth a more caring and loving world, dreamed and birthed through collaboration. Collaboration with her bandmates and sister, Ansley Simpson, Nick Ferrio, producer Jonas Bonetta, and producer Jim Bryson. And also in collaboration for the first video, Viscosity, with Sandra Brewster. And you hopefully have seen Sandra's show at the AGO, Blur, that we did together. But also, if you didn't see that show, you can still come and see the beautiful, large, untitled wall transfer that's still up and will be up for another year at the AGO. She's a Canadian visual artist based in Toronto, the daughter of Guyanese-born parents. She's especially attuned to the experiences of people of Caribbean heritage and their ongoing relationships with back home. Sandra holds a BFA from York University, a Master's of Visual Studies from the University of Toronto. Recent solo exhibitions include the one I already mentioned, and then Token Contemporary Ongoing at A-Space. There's also Identity in Flux, which is a group exhibition organized by Vizart in Serbia. It also went to Macedonia, Montenegro. She was also in Here We Are Here, Black Canadian Contemporary Art, organized by the ROM, traveled to the Musée des Beaux-Arts in Montreal and the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia. Her art and her person are well traveled. Her works have been featured in Lagos Photo Festival in Nigeria, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Her exhibition, It's All a Blur, received the Gattuso Prize for Outstanding Featured Exhibition in the Contact Photography Festival. In 2018, she was recipient of the Artist Prize from the Toronto Friends of the Visual Arts, and she has a number of exhibitions upcoming. So please welcome Leanne and Sandra. Before we begin, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourselves, and then I have a few kind of things of business to do.
Ani Kinuaya, thanks so much, Wanda. Sandra, hi, it's good to see you. I really appreciate AGO from Home supporting the world premiere of this video and a little celebration of Theory of Ice. And it's wonderful to be here visiting with all of you tonight.
Thank you. How about you, Sandra? Sandra's having a little bit of internet difficulties this evening, so she may be dropping in and out. There we are.
Yeah. I'm having a little problem. Sorry, everybody. Kind of windy in this area, and so something's going on with this connection. Okay, so I didn't hear what was right before I but I just want to say I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy that Leanne asked me to collaborate with her to create this video for Viscosity. When she first asked me, I was kind of overjoyed and quite honored. And thank you, AGO. Thank you, Wanda and Kathleen, for having us.
And thank you both for being here. I feel like we're like old friends. I wish we had a campfire, which comes up a lot in your music. Or we can just sit on this beach here, have a fire, you know.
Yeah, for real.
No more technology.
No more technology.
So I want to acknowledge that the AGO sits on the land of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Michisagi in general, the Anishinaabe, including the Odawa and the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and the AGO itself is on Anishinaabe land. So I want to give acknowledgement to all of the nations that have called Toronto home, but I also want to do a shout out to all the urban Indigenous folk that call Toronto home today. There's over 90,000 of us. We're all getting vaccinated at present. This will be the first pandemic that doesn't kill us first. I got mine this morning, so please go out and get vaccinated. I also want to thank the TD Bank for their ready commitment. They sponsor all of our talks and performances, and we really appreciate it. And tonight, I want to turn to Leanne and Sandra to start off, because this is your video release for one of the tracks, Viscosity. But to start us off, I thought maybe I would ask Leanne if you would introduce the video and your work with Sandra and how that came about.
Yeah, for sure. So I first met Sandra a few years ago at the University of Toronto when I was doing a studio visit in the Visual Studies MA program. And she invited me into her studio, and I was just blown away by her work, by the Black brilliance of her work. And I sort of made a mental note when I was in that studio that I felt like I would love to collaborate with her artistically if anything ever came up in the future. And then I think this album, I spent a lot of time thinking about world building and placemaking and the land. And I think the land and campfires and beaches and hikes and urban wilderness spaces have really saved my heart over the last year. And they've become a pretty profound part of my life. So the lyrics to the song and the music to the song were written pre-pandemic. But in thinking through sort of who I wanted to work with and what energy I wanted to kind of infuse into the images of the video, it seemed to make sense to reach out to Sandra and bring in that sort of Black world building and placemaking and politics of relating to the land in conversation with what I was doing from a Michisagi Anishinaabe perspective.
Sandra, is there anything you'd like to say before we show the video?
Just that there was a lot of synchronicity that was happening here, because there were things that I did not realize that was happening with Leanne, I guess. And And I found that afterwards, there were things, you know, there was imagery as well as feelings when she's talking about, you know, this moment that, you know, it's like a pensive moment as such. And that's how I found this last year as being quite pensive, and a lot of looking and thinking and looking closely at things. And so, you know, most of the footage is from Leslie Spit, of which afterwards I realized was an absolute connection. And there were other locations like my home or my yard or my mother's home. But yeah, primarily was Leslie Spit. And yeah, that's all I'll say. But yeah, I found that there were a lot of connections that happened. I was also considering my practice as well, right? And I think that fed into the visuals, as well as, you know, a lot of the work I do is around photo-based gel transfer. So I was thinking about if I were to take these images and prepare them for that result, let's kind of document that kind of imagery, like that, you know, yeah, that imagery.
What did you use to shoot it?
My cell phone. I
Yeah.
think I used my cell phone as well because of what Leanne told me were the overriding themes of the poem. And so I was actually waiting to get this new cell phone to shoot on. And it worked beautifully. Yeah, I shot it on the cell phone, and then I edited myself, and I manipulated the imagery as well, like not only the photographs, but also the videos, so that the contrast was high. I was thinking about how I would prepare something for a photo transfer. Yeah.
All right, with that, we're going to turn to the video.
Calling out, calling in, you're not fooling me. Tethered to the kinship of disassociated zeros and ones. Shining your crown of neoliberal likes.
Truly a stunning, stunning video, Sandra. And there's something about the quality of your voice too, Leanne, that always has this kind of great gravity to it, where you can feel like the, you know, the heaviness of something, but then this lightness of hope, like kind of that breathy kind of hope thing is happening at the same time. It's an, yeah, I really enjoy your sound. And I know you're singing on this album too, which we can get to later, but I was thinking about, you know, because yes, it was written before and created during, and just this sense of this moment when you ask about turning it off, you know, getting away from the blue light, turning off the social media, finding another way to connect that is more intimate. The last line is like warm into each other, careful moment after careful moment. And your images do a similar thing, like this deep, beautiful, close dive into things we might miss, or things that really capture us, that are kind of small in a way, but are grand, big, huge. They are all of life itself in a tiny moment. And I was wondering if each of you, I'll start with you, Leanne, from the lyrics, and then Sandra with the images, could speak to a bit about that, like how has this year been in terms of that, and where has your attention shifted, and have you, you know, if there are different values coming out from this year, are there different things you feel connected to, different ways you want to operate in the world?
I think that I've always been drawn to sort of interstitial spaces between worlds and between genres and between disciplines, because of those tiny moments. And I've always liked in my work to sort of amplify the tiny moments in life that connect us to other forms of life and to something bigger. And I think that those moments are really easy to miss. And I think when, after a year of being under stay-at-home orders, I think those moments of connection for me have become even more precious. And I think we now all have sort of a collective experience of the benefits of connecting over the internet and through disassociated zeros and ones, but we also are really acutely aware of the limitations of those folks that don't have access, of the asymmetric way that the violence of the pandemic has impacted the Black community, the Indigenous community, our frontline workers, and our workers in general. And so I think that this song was written at a time where I was sort of just rethinking my own relationship to the internet and what it's useful for and what it's not useful for. And then I think this period of meditation of the last year has just made me grateful for standing in a room of people and of community and of experiencing an idea or a sound or having an embodied experience. In a collective sense, I really, really miss that. I'm finding that I don't have very many memories from the last year, particularly of events, because I don't have very many embodied experiences. And I know that's very important in terms of my own artistic practice, but it's also very important in terms of Indigenous life. The idea of standing in a room shoulder to shoulder with your community, through the tough times and through the struggles and also through the joy, is something that I think brings people together.
Absolutely. As I stare at my picture in the background, like I haven't been able to go home. You know, I haven't been able to see these waters because, you know, they've been on lockdown, and, you know, I want to respect that as because I live in Toronto and not bring anything there. But it is this, you know, you missing a piece of your soul when you can't set foot on these things, on this land, or, you know, but we find it in other ways, which I think is the some of the point. Some of your images, Sandra, I can't get the one of the ants out of my mind. It's so beautiful. And the birds, it's like this this looking, but it's also very tactile, the way you build images. I was wondering if you could speak about your inspirations for the work.
Yeah, the ants were from my backyard, and I was with a couple of friends, and we were observing these ants and just wondering, where they're going, what they're doing. And immediately I felt to record them. It seemed like throughout the summer I was thinking about this project, and it just so happened I was also in the space of mind of searching for, peace and calm, getting away from, an environment where there's lots of people. I guess everybody was searching for that. My sister and I, we had decided to go to Leslie Spit. We bike rode there and met her friend there. And then we ended up going into all of these different little areas in Leslie Spit where, these, I don't think I've ever been there before. And so just seeing, what I considered unusual, but was very usual for that area, was quite an experience. So, the imagery of the birds, the cormorants on these tall, bare trees. And I was just thinking about how, their feces, it causes, the leaves to die, it causes these trees to be so bare. And so it made me think about how nature affects nature. And then about how the, this idea of, I guess the technology thing we're talking about, and being on social media, the internet, and how overwhelming it is, and just wanting to kind of, get away from it all. There were a lot of things that happened this year that, had me really wanting to get away from it all. So not even, the whole COVID happening at the beginning, as well as, this inundation of the violence towards Black people by the police. And then a result of that enters your space in all of these odd ways. So on Instagram, receiving these messages and such, which I guess are well-meaning, but at the same time can be very intrusive. And so it does feel like you want to get away from it all. So I've been doing a lot of walking. I go to the Humber. Leslie Spit was a wonderful place to go to. I assist my friends walking their dogs, which has been a lot of fun. And so this time has been about discovering things that I don't usually engage in. And, I think also mostly closely looking at things. So there were also images like, there's one where the bird looks like it's going into a window. It would, I have this window in this room here where, when spring comes, these birds, they see the reflection, they start to, fly into the window. And so I put up this sheet, and so the sheet casts a shadow from the tree beyond it. And so it's just interesting how these patterns or these textures emerge, because I'm trying to not allow the bird to hurt itself. It's just like all of these things about, how we kind of try to, control nature, or how nature is affected by, what we build, and all sorts of stuff. I hope I'm not going in circles, but
No, you're
things that would just like
not at all.
that, So it's just, I think that for me, the whole time was so pensive and thoughtful, wanting peace and quiet and to get away, which is ironic because we have no way to really get away. So we have to kind of find that for ourselves.
Absolutely. And besides, going in circles in our culture is a good thing. It's like, it's how we talk, it's how we think, it's what we think the world is. And there's so much in this album actually about connectivity, about cycles, about, how one thing is related to another, and every little intervention that we make as human beings into these cycles, we're seeing some of the effects of that, whether it's climate change or a positive thing. It could go in any direction. I mean, we don't have to necessarily have a negative effect as human beings. We can have positive effect too. And I think it's interesting that Leslie Spit is the site, because it's a man-made area, really. But I always think like Mother Earth and animals, like they're so resilient. Like we learned our adaptive qualities, like we gain them from them because we come from them. But so this space has become like this birding area, it's like the birds have taken over. It's become kind of an environmentally sensitive area, but it's definitely not natural in that way, right? It's something that's come to be. And in the city, like we live in cities, small and big, we find refuge however we can, in that way. We try to find those connections and those relationships that make us human, that make us feel human. And one of those things is slowing down. And I really feel that in the work, this sense of like contemplation and slowing down. And somehow like the planes going down helped somehow us think about that. But as that slows down, we think so much about what hasn't changed. And that becomes super clear when you can stop and look, like what hasn't changed. I wondered if you could have a bit of a go at this, Leanne, in terms of thinking about some of the things you were thinking about in this album.
Yeah.
I was very much, I spent a lot of time thinking about transformation, and water became a really important sort of artistic metaphor, because water changes into so many forms throughout the cycle of the year. And the changes are drastic, and they're world-making changes. So I had the opportunity to witness over the course of about 6 weeks a frozen lake melting, and being there every day. You notice all of the tiny changes that are incremental, that you might not notice if you're sort of just visiting it once or twice a week. But when you have that intimate sort of relationship with it, you can see the changes over time. And there's a part when a lake is melting that the ice kind of is like almost like a drum. It's the top layer is almost like a skin across the water, and the sounds that come out are incredible, the sonics. And so I was thinking about when the lake is frozen, there's like a winter lodge where fish and living things are concentrated at the bottom. So what is it like to be a fish who has the whole lake for most of the year, but then when the lake freezes, you're all on top of each other for the whole winter? What happens when the lake starts to melt and the waters are turning over, and birds are coming back and animals are coming back, and so it became a really, I think, generative metaphor. And the same thing happened actually watching a lake freeze. So I thought a lot about ice and about cold and about snow, because of course, culturally, those are such powerful times for us, and they're very fragile right now under global warming. I wanted the record to have a calming energy. I wanted it to be hopeful but honest, and I wanted it to be a conversation with both the past and the present. I mean, both the past and the future. I wanted it to have a presencing feel. I really also wanted to perform it. and I hope that eventually happens, because I think this album, my band, when we sat down to write it, we really wanted to make sure in the writing process that we could perform all of the songs, because we love playing together and we love connecting to audiences in real time. And that's been rare in the last year, and also become so very precious.
Yeah, I'm really hoping we can do it for Abequat in December.
Yeah.
I was like, we'll just space everyone out and everybody can have their masks on, but we'll still do it. I'm going to switch the order up of the songs that I sent you. Let's all thank Danny in the background, who's running our tech. We're going to go with Failure of Melting, because it really relates to what Leanne was just talking about. We're going to hear a track, and we will be back after the song for more conversation.
frozen sighed and gave up. The lake wrote their letter of resignation. July 15th, 30 cubic meters. Just like the Gwich'in always said, I bring you coffee, a blanket, moonlight. I bring you stitches, a feather, 3 books. The caribou sit measuring emptiness. The fish study giving up. The molecules calculate the effects of hate. You break down to a less ordered state. July 15th, 30 cubic meters. Just like the Gwich'in always said, the ice breathes and gives in. The lake runs out of options. The ice breathes, and there are all kinds of ways to fail. I bring you coffee. I bring you coffee, a blanket, moonlight. I bring you stitches, a feather, 3 books. I bring you coffee, a blanket, moonlight. I bring you stitches, a feather, 3 books.
That was The Failure of Melting, Leanne Simpson. In that, you had started talking about frozen lakes, and in this one, it, from what I understand, it's the story of a frozen lake that actually fell off of a cliff in the Northwest Territories due to what was happening in the permafrost. I wonder if you could speak a bit about that.
Yeah, so a few years ago, there was a lake in Gwich'in Territory in the Northwest Territories that died, I guess, that fell off a cliff because the permafrost melted and the land that was the container for the lake no longer existed. And I remember reading about it in the news, and it hit me as such a profound moment where the impacts, I guess, of capitalism and the way of colonialism and anti-Blackness had caused such damage to our relations in the natural world that a lake had died. And I thought of sort of all of the fish and all of the life in that lake and sort of this massive transformation. And so I think I wanted to write a song that just let that sink in a little bit, and that sort of also honored that lake and honored what had happened and sort of witnessed it, I guess. And I think the OK and Dike song about the OK Glacier in Iceland is also very much written from the perspective of these beings and these entities, these relatives of us that are being eliminated.
Yeah, you get this real sense that, I mean, what do we really need a more caring and loving world? Like, it sounds so cheesy, but it's the truth, and it's a complicated thing. It's not an easy thing, actually, is what we found, right? It's not so easy to create this caring and loving world in the macro way, but in our tiny worlds, we actually can quite do it one step at a time, one act at a time, one song at a time. I was thinking about how songs can be kind of salves, but they also, as you have talked about, can build worlds, they create worlds. And yours is a kind of more loving world that you kind of I felt like you were embracing the lake. You wanted to give it gifts, you wanted to bring it offerings. And it's such a beautiful thing. And I think many of us feel that when we, things pass away that nobody notices or don't want to notice. And thinking about, there's no separation between the life of the land and all of its beings and human beings. We're part of that. And it's not an accident, I think, that Black Lives Matter became such a huge moment when everything was quiet, and had an impact in a way that is growing and growing and growing, because everyone is kind of at home, and maybe they can hear and listen for a second. Much like this thing, listening to the water takes time, takes slowness, it takes understanding, it takes diving deep inside oneself. And our world is not made for listening. Really, it's made for shouting in an empty room. Sandra, I was wondering if you could, do you see connections between these things in the way that I'm talking about in terms of thinking about valuing human life, valuing Black lives, valuing Indigenous lives, and valuing, the earth, the land, the water, plants and animals?
Oh, definitely. I think that, I think it all is about, that pause, right? If we really, I'm trying to think again about all of these months that have passed, and, these times that are really contemplative. And, I'm trying to think of, like simple things like, valuing friendships, right? And during this time, although we are very far away from each other, many people have spoken about how close they have become with certain people. It's like you have really connected with those that maybe you never thought you would connect with in, like, say, the normal world, right? It took like a time like this to really feel the specialness in that connectivity. Yeah, I think that there are, when Leanne talks about, the cracking of ice under your feet, right? It's these kinds of things. I really love these kinds of metaphors for, not only danger, but also, like, I don't know, it's like a scary thing, but also a precious thing, a careful thing, and the importance of, caring for the spaces that surround you, the people who are around you, because life is so fragile, right? So, yeah.
I've been missing the sound that I would normally be experiencing right now, which is the sound of the breakup, the ice breaking up. And where, on Georgian Bay, it's like tinkling. It's almost like crystals tinkling. It's the most amazing sound in the world. I've made many, many videos of it because I just find it the most beautiful thing on earth. And you talked a bit about the sound of that lake, making a drum. And I think between thinking about the way sound music does that kind of thing, it does build a world, but we also come from sounds and music that kind of builds our understanding of where we want to take it. And you've taken on a big song, Willie Dunn, I Pity the Country, on the album. And Willie Dunn is one of our greats and one of our firsts and much beloved figure. And this song, I think, what a perfect choice for this damn situation we find ourselves in right now. I'm going to play it, and then I'm hoping we can chat about it afterwards. So Willie Dunn, I Pity the Country.
thrives on hate. Small are the lives of cheats and of liars, of bigoted news press, fascist town criers. Deception annoys me. Deception destroys me. The Bill of Rights throws me. Jails, they all know me. Frustrated are churchmen. The saving of soul men. Tinker the tailor. The colonial governor. They rape and they beat me, seeking to draw me away from the roundness of this life. Silly civil servants, they thrive off my body. Their trip is with power, back bacon and welfare. Police, they arrest me. Materialists detest me. Pollution, it chokes me. Movies, they joke me. Politicians exploit me. City life, it jades me. Hudson's Bay fleeces me. Hunting laws freak me. Government is stumbling. Revolution is rumbling. To be ruled in impunity is tradition continuity. I pity the country. I pity the state and the mind of a man who thrives on hate. I pity this country.
And to think he wrote that in 1971.
I know, it's incredible. And I think that's what really drew me to the song, is how much the lyrics resonated with me at the time. And then also throughout this beautiful Black mobilization all summer and all fall as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the lyric, police, they arrest me, materialists detest me, pollution, it chokes me, movies, they joke me. 1971 to now, it's like, in a way, there's not a lot of movement, but there is, you know what I mean? There may not be a lot of movement from the state and the country, but there's a lot of movement by us, individuals, doing what we do together collectively in every kind of way that we can. And I wonder if we aren't going to be even more hardcore after this, like more demanding of what we want from this world.
I really wanted to honor that generation of Indigenous musicians and Indigenous artists that came before me, because I think they did a tremendous amount of labor and of work in terms of activism. Willie Dunn was an amazing activist, politically and ethically, in addition to being a musician and in addition to building communities for musicians and writers and visual artists. And so I initially decided to cover that song as part of the Native North American gathering at Megaphono, or in partnership with Megaphono in Ottawa a few years ago. And Willie Thrasher and Linda Saddleback were playing. Eleniso Bobswin was doing some pieces from Bush Lady. Willie Mitchell was there, Eric Landry, all of these old timers who had practices in terms of, we're making music for our people at a time where they didn't have platforms, they didn't have arts grants, they didn't have touring budgets, but they did it anyway, and they produced this fire. And so Willie had passed, and I wanted him to be able to be a part of that honoring without being there. And so I Pity really spoke to me. And in performing it that night, it was the same night that the Gerald Stanley verdict came down in the Colton Bushy case. And so Rosanna Deerchild announced that minutes, seconds before we went out to take the stage. And I think in that moment of sort of looking out at the audience, knowing that all those old timers were backstage, and seeing all of those Indigenous folks in the audience, those people of color, and feeling the weight of that verdict, that sort of, it felt like we'd been punched in the gut. And then sort of having this song and these lyrics and these sounds to sort of infuse into that space became such a moment, I think, for everyone who was there, and certainly for me. And Willie Dunn's family was there as well. And so that moment, I think, then kind of attached me and the band to that song, and we wanted to record it and include it here, just as a way of, I think, honoring that work and honoring that artistic brilliance that's not often seen.
I think as far, every time I have a moment of, those moments are very painful because, for those who don't know, George Stanley got off for murdering Colton Bushy and shooting him in the back. Those kinds of moments, you need something like music, you need the drum, you need these things to kind of carry you through that kind of pain. But then you also can feel the power of everyone who's like walked before you, everyone who's fought before you, everyone who's made all this happen. It builds who you are. And I remember, Sandra, you were talking about the gel transfer that we have on the wall, the piece with Tuktu in it, and the band Black Sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And how much is it Black Sound? How much it shaped who you are, right? And I think this is what music does in a big way, and Leanne's music is doing also for another generation. Can you speak a bit about that?
Well, the band is called Black Sam, and I think that's what, I was happy to be able to do this video because it had me thinking about things in a different way and a little bit of a diversion from what I usually do. It's a little bit more opaque and not as literal, maybe, not that my work is so literal as such, but yeah, I think that, legacy is very important. And I think that throughout my practice, I always think about these people who came before. And when I think about artists who came before, I think about their ability to continue practice or not, and the challenges that they faced and why certain barriers are in place, right? Soon we're going to see an exhibition by Denise Tomasis which was, you know, a wonderful artist who passed away very young. And I know for me, she was a huge impact in how she saw the world, and also how she explored her painting skills, her pseudo abstract skills and pseudo representational skills, and how she took over spaces, architectural spaces. She would just take over a wall, or, you know, these large paintings that she did. Her influence very global, of these, you know, environments, houses packed on top of each other. And I just think about, you know, the amount of information that there is out there about her and other artists who have made these impacts on people, and also who could have possibly made larger impact if those barriers were not there, right? Yeah, the piece at the AGO is of a person named Tuku, and she's a performance artist, a singer, and her mother was Salome Bay, her father was Howard Matthews, and their whole family have made these impacts on, you know, different communities here in Toronto over time. And I think that just because maybe some of these people are not here, or what they built is not here anymore, still their legacy lives on, is important to remember and cherish. Yeah.
I just did the thing that I always say other people do, where I started talking and I was muted. I think we are almost out of time, but I do want to play one more track. And we started late because of technical difficulties, so I think we can take a little bit of time, a little bit more time. I would like to listen to Surface Tension, but while we do that, we're going to close with the song and not come back after the song. So I was hoping that there's a line like, "And the river only goes one way, and you can't get lost. There are simple stolen moments, there are simple stolen moments, and we love when we are able." And it's one of the lines in the song that just really gets to me, and really actually expresses a way I live my life, to be honest. It's like everything I do is a stolen moment, and part of that is partly because this world, it's been created as if we aren't supposed to be here still. But I wondered if you wanted to say a bit about the song before it plays, Leanne. And I also just wanted to thank both of you for being here.
Thank you for having me, and Migo and Sandra for making this fantastic video. Yeah, Surface Tension, I think, is about life, what life is like under, for us, colonialism. And then I think it could possibly speak to that related but separate experience of anti-Blackness, and having this constant imposition of white supremacy, trying to eliminate. And so I think I wanted to make a little bit of space for Indigenous joy and Indigenous love, and for all of the beautiful things. And I think art and creative practice is such an important part of this, of creating those worlds and those relationships and those moments of connection and beauty, even though in spite of this colonial machinery of death, and really try to grow those spaces a little bit.
I just say something that kind of is in line with what you just said. You know, I like to read a lot of Fred Moten. I remember I was looking at I think you had, you know, he included a quote by Fred Moten in something. And I remember as I was reading, I was thinking to myself, oh, this is like Fred Moten, and it was Fred Moten. But this idea that, you know, the ability to critique the world around you, but still live with joy and being, right? Which I think is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think I would be alive today if I hadn't discovered art and music and this kind of beauty that both of you create and both of you continue to create. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you everyone online for listening, and much love. And we are going to close with the song Surface Tension.
and the river